Hi everybody, and welcome to the Moneyman Towers, and I'm going to be talking to Mark Keohane about his bold prediction that the Springboks will beat the All Blacks at Loftus, a ballsy call to say the least. And I'm going to be giving you a demonstration on betting 101 handicap betting and what it means, because I get a lot of requests from people not understanding how the handicapping works, and sometimes people make the wrong bets because they don't understand it. So we're going to deal with that. And we're going to start by looking at the upcoming game this week. The Springboks traveling to Mendoza to take on Argentina. And the bookies have the betting at 7.5 points, which they believe that the Springboks are going to win by around 8 points. The simplest way to look at this is that bookies look at trying to level the playing field and giving one team an amount of points and taking a certain amount of points away from another team. So the Springboks are minus 7.5. And what that means is that when the score starts, it's at 0 for Argentina and minus 7.5 for South Africa, which means that if the Springboks are going to win you your bet, they have to win by at least 8 points. So 28-20, 29-20, 8 or more. It doesn't matter how many more they beat them by, you don't get any more money. You win your bet. Conversely, the parlance for that is that you're giving points to the Springboks. You mean giving them minus 7.5. Argentina are plus 7.5, which simply means that if you're going to bet on Argentina, you're believing that they're not going to lose that game by 8 or more points, which means that 21-27, you win your bet. 21-28, you win your bet. If they lose by 8 or more, you lose your money. Also, I get a frequently asked question is, if Argentina win, do I still win my bet? Well, of course you do, because again, you win your bet. Argentina wins 21-20. It means that the score at the end of the game is handicapped 28.5 points to 20. So it doesn't matter if Argentina win or anything else happens, as long as they do not lose by 8 points or more, you win your bet. Pretty simple, really. Mark, how'd you do last week?
Well, thanks to Andre Pollard, not too well. I mean, I thought that they would win by, I think the spread was 14.5, just under 15 in Durban, and I said it would be 15 plus that the Springboks would win by, 13 in the end. So one of those 5 kicks had gone over, and it's those fine lines we speak about. I know when you put down $1,000 for the Super Rugby final, the spread was big on the Crusaders winning comfortably, and you put down 1,000, say it would be 18 or less, and it was 19. So you lost your money, but there was a point in it, and I kind of always say that to guys who do these Super Brew predictions, and it's win or lose. They don't understand spread betting, they don't understand handicap betting, and the difference between 1 or 2 points could be your $1,000 that you put down. So it is an adrenaline kind of charged way that you watch the game. I know it's very different, and there's no meaningless score. So
no, but there's no, the thing that people don't get for theirs is every once in a while I'll get someone coming online and saying, so what now? I lost a bet. And well, I lost. I mean, my whole strategy is to place a bet which is it's got the best chance of winning. So if I lose by 1, it makes no difference to me. I don't act emotionally. It's like, well, okay, you lose. You just got to obviously win more than you lose. And you need an element of luck. Like someone said I should buy Pollard a beer. Jesus, I should buy Pollard a whole case of beers. Because, if you look at him missing 5 kicks, I believe, they didn't take 3 other shots at goal. The Springboks should have won that game by 25 points. I should have lost my bet. But that, you take the luck, because you get enough bad luck when it comes to sports gambling.
would you say that the bookies have kind of, in a way, been misguided by the 13 points when the context of the match was, as you said, 25 plus, and that the spread would have been a lot different this weekend in Mendoza had they kicked all their kicks, kind of, had they played more conservative?
Yeah, you make a great point there, Mark. If Pollard had it kicked, say, 5 out of 7, So you had, let's say, 9 points of the penalty kicks. And then they'd taken a couple of shots at goal and converted one. That's 12. That's a 25-point beating. When the bookies look at pricing their next game, at 25 points, all of a sudden, it's not going to translate down to 7.5, which it is this week. It would have been maybe at 13, 14.5 points. And to me, that's where the spread should be. So when a bookie gets it as wrong as they have this week, at 7.5, it's the bet of the year for me. Whether it wins or loses, I'm still making the right bet, and this is what I try and teach people: is that I don't mind losing the bets I know should win. It's when I make a bad or emotional bet, or I try and chase, which is one of the biggest problems for gamblers out there, is they try and chase losses. And I try and tell them that the bets you don't make will make you as much money as the bets you do make that win. Because if you don't lose a bet, you keep that money in your kitty and you accumulate more money.
But if you look at, when you assess a bet, do you look at things like historical form? If you look at the Pumas, they've won 4 of the last 26 games. Are those factors that you consider, or do you just look at it in the week in terms of team selections, form of that team going into the match? What's the basis that you would kind of make your spread?
There's a lot of idiots out there that say that history and past games are meaningless. I think that's, people like that will just continue to contribute money to the bookies. History, the field, the results. I mean, look at the Argentinians. 4 out of 26 games they've won. That's, I'm not great at math, as you know, but it's about a 14.6% winning percentage. That's the recent history that we've got to go on. They've changed coaches, and my rationale last week was right in my mind, and it was the right bet. I was lucky to win it. Now this week the bookies have overreacted. They've taken the 13, they've halved that, and said it's a one-try game going there. There's no way. To me, I'm going to bet this week 2,500 Rand on the Springboks to win by 8 or more. I think they'll win by 15 plus. And the reason is the kicks. Whether Jantjies plays or Pollard plays, neither one of them could possibly have a worse game than what Pollard had last week in terms of kicking. Unlike Durban, I think that they're going to take the shot at goals because they're going to want to play to win. You go with a different mindset there. So if the Argentinians transgress, you're going to keep slotting those things over, building up scoreboard pressure. So for me, the 7.5 is a gift. It's the biggest gift I've seen this year. So for me, 2,500 Rand to win back 22.50, a 90% return on that investment. There's work. You look at the way the stock market's performing. All those poor people that may have invested in some of those things that went pear-shaped. I'd rather take that bet than any stock market bet right now.
And outside of the handicap, what other things would you be betting on in the match? What are the other options that you would advise to the punter out there to kind of entertain themselves with, but also not be reckless about?
Well, there's always a good bet that I like, especially in a match like this. It will be tight, and I think the Boks will run away with it in the second half. So, scoreboard pressure. There's a bet on WSB, and I don't endorse them. I think they're the best of a bad bunch. They have a bet which is, will there be more penalties, and will there be more penalties converted or tries scored? And you probably get that around 4 or 5 to 1, that there'll be more tries, meaning that for more penalties to be kicked and converted is 4 or 5 to 1. Now in a game like that, that's a very interesting bet, because I believe that there'll be a lot of penalties kicked. And if they kick 5 or 6, then you've got a good chance of cashing in on a 4 or 5 to 1 bet. Those are the bets those are the 2 bets that I'll be making. And I may dabble in running when I get a feel for how the game's going, but I can't advise that in running to the people that follow me.
And the All Blacks at home against the Wallabies, is it worth putting anything on a game like that?
Well, for 34 minutes last week, the Wallabies threw everything that they had at a All Black team that, in my opinion, played terribly, and they still won by 25 points. with an intercept try that could have gone the other way. So instead of 7 that way, it could have been 7 this way, which makes it 32 plus another 7 is 39. They could have won that game by 40 points, and they showed up for 44 minutes of the game. So the spread there is 22, meaning that if you want to back the All Blacks, they got to win by 23 or more, and if you want to back the Wallabies, they can only lose by 22 or more or less. Look, on paper, the All Blacks should beat them by 40 points, but 22.5 is just enough to sort of to make you doubt. And the bookies have got that, what I consider to be well handicapped, you know. Anything else, you'd start seeing a lot of money coming in if it was in the teens, if it was 19 or 18. I'm going to avoid that game. I'm just going to watch it and hope for a Wallaby win. But yeah, look, if I had to bet and someone put a gun to my head and said you got to bet on this game, I'd bet the All Blacks to cover that spread.
And the Rugby Championship, we've seen that first round now. I did make a bold call, as you say.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, I kind of, look, I've got a huge regard for
Were you smoking the devil's lettuce?
Hey, apparently so, according to a lot of people. But I just think there's, on the times, and it's been very rare over the last decade, where the All Blacks have been troubled. If you look at the British and Irish Lions, you look at the occasional game against a fired-up Irish side, and when the Springboks in Cape Town got it right for 75 minutes with a pack, and slowing down the All Black ball, it does stifle the way they play. They do get frustrated. Like I said, it is so rare for them to be in that position. But they don't quite have the depth that they've had in previous years, and especially among their pack. So if you look at a Kieran Reid and you look at a Brodie Retallick, and are they going to be there come Loftus? Maybe, maybe not. You know, Retallick missed a year. Reid has come back after 7 months with a back surgery.
Well, how many injuries did they get in the last game, the first game against the Wallabies?
They got 2 in the backs, Crotty and Ione. But
it's a tough way to open up the championship for them to play Australia back to back because of the rivalry and the dislike that they have for each other.
No, without a doubt. And but I look at that All Black pack and I think if they suffer 1 or 2 injuries, I don't think there's a like-for-like replacement at the moment, especially among their loose forwards. If you take a Luke Whitelock as your replacement to a Kieran Reid, then you look at the Springbok pack and you got Mostert and Arges Neyman. They go out and Etzebeth comes in with Peter Steph de Toy, and you still got Loert de Jager waiting on the side. So I think we have the capacity to trouble them at home with a passionate home crowd and when there's belief. I don't think the belief's going to be there just yet for us to go to Wellington and beat them, but I think we can run them close because of how well coached this side is. They're far better coached side.
Do you rate Rassie?
I rate him. I've rated him for a long time. I think wherever he's gone, be it with the Cheetahs, with Province, when he was director of rugby, he went back down into the junior ranks that under-19 side won it. But I think the biggest growth for him has been going to Munster. The 18 months he spent at Munster, I think matured him as a human being. It took him out of his comfort zone. He's an Afrikaans-speaking lad, originally from Dispatch, then Bloemfontein. He embraced the culture.
One hell of a good rugby player.
And he was a hell of a good rugby player. You know, it's injury cut short his career at 30 years old. He had a bad foot injury, but also a coach when he was a player. Interesting thing, when we did the ASICS World Cup teaser launch to the retailers, Eben Etzebeth and Beast, were 2 of the ASICS ambassadors, were there with Jean de Villiers and Sia Khaleesi. And they did a change room experience, and we spoke to them about what are the differences in those 12 minutes when you come in at halftime. Each one of them has captained a side, and then coaches and what they do. And you know, chatting to Beast, who's been around 100+ tests, 10 years in Super Rugby, he said he's never experienced anyone as professional and technically proficient in that 12 minutes as Erasmus. And he spoke about that first test at Ellis Park against England. He said all they were shown was the 3 England tries early on, clipped already, showing where they were making mistakes, where they were punching as a midfield, where they were kind of giving them too much space, that their line speed wasn't good enough. He said, and they went right back out and they could fix it. He said it's the first time in his career he's ever had a coach unemotional and very clinical and just showing them the areas they needed to change. So there's a hell of a huge regard for, I think, his technical expertise, but also for his man management.
Well, with all due respect to Alistair, who proved to be a disaster in many ways, I think Rassie's brought a level of intellect and rugby knowledge that we haven't seen for a long time in that position.
And I think also his honesty in how he answers questions. He answers them from a rugby perspective. So it's like, why is that player playing? This is why. Why is that one playing? This is why. Why isn't he playing? He needs to work on these aspects, but I'm not I'm not chucking him away.
So who do you think's playing this week? Who do you think, is it Yankees or Pollard's going to play?
My understanding is that it's Yankees. It's also a game that I think he needs to get Yankees back on the front foot after England.
Yeah.
He felt it was a game that there wasn't pressure on initially. They'd won the series, and he wanted to see Yankees in that kind of environment. It bucketed with rain. It was awful conditions. The pack didn't get parity, and the guy just got worse as the game went on. Afterwards, he said, look, he's never yanked his fly off, but on 60 he did because he just felt he was going nowhere. But he made it clear there that he wasn't throwing him out. And he's worked with him. Pollard's clearly taken the step up. He is the number one at the moment. Yankees 2, and Willems has been nurtured and groomed in to play 10, 15. I think long term, Willems is obviously going to be the one that they're going to look at, him and Pollard. But Yankees 26 tests over a 7-year period, 17 of those 19 starts he had in the last 2 years. And he's got a coach, and he's got an assistant coach who's his head coach at the Lions, who is backing him. And I think if they can get a bit of forward parity, which I think they will in Mendoza, you will see him play well. He played well there last year, he played well against the French. He's just got to have one of those games where if he does play in England or in Ireland or in All Blacks, that he actually does that big moment. And if you've got a coach who still believes in him, he's probably got 18 months. If he doesn't come through then, you won't see him after the next World Cup. But I think it's the way he's managed his players, and it's very unemotionally. I think he's installed a lot of confidence in that squad. And he's been very clear. Straight after the test in Durban, he said there will be 4 or 5 changes. There's a reason. Why didn't Franco Mostert play? He said he's played every minute of the year. Why did he pick Etzebeth to start? He said he's good enough to start. If I get 20 minutes out of him, it's a bonus. If I get 80 out of him, it'll be a freak show. He got 80 out of him. There is something that's brewing in that Springbok side that wasn't there previously.
I think it's time for people to stop complaining. Because last year, and with the Alistair Coetzee era, all it was whinging and complaining. I think we win that series against England. We've won it, and then the mentality in South Africa is we've got to win the third one. Why? What difference does the third one? Most normal sporting codes won't play a third game because if you've won the first 2, you've won the series. So it was a great time and I was glad to see him experiment and stick to his guns. Whereas I think other coaches in the past, to me, they get that blazer on, and even Henniker, I think, became addicted to that blazer and can't lose. So and that attitude meant that the coaches were playing not to lose rather than playing to win, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I've been speaking
this fear of losing in a Springbok game.
Speaking to Rassie as well, and he said, sure, you want to win every game, but he's not going to win every game. He was clear about that. He said, and he needed to develop 35 to 40 players. The All Blacks played 54 players last year.
Didn't Kitch Christie win every game?
14 of them, but he never left the borders of South Africa. Good on him. But
he knew his limitations.
They were, and he had Louis later.
Yeah.
So, Rassie said that if you look at the All Blacks, they used 54 players last year, and that was through injuries, through unavailabilities, and extending their tour, the 5-match tour at the end of the year, to see if some players were good enough. And Steve Hansen said some are, some aren't. Yeah. They've done their sifting for the World Cup last year. South Africa's doing it this year, but in a controlled fashion. Rassie identified 49 players, and that included 9 players overseas. He's played probably about 40 of them already. He's worked through it. He's culling as he's going along, and he's starting to mould, especially a strong forward pack. He's getting his half-back combination right. He's not quite settled yet on the midfield, but no other Springbok coach has come in and immediately backed 2 young, brilliant winners, like he has, with the understanding that he needed an experienced old hand back from the UK. Willie Leroux is playing outstanding rugby, and got Warwick Gelant into the mix, but didn't expose him to start with these 2 youngsters and say, I've now got a back 3. When he picked Gelant in the rain at Newlands, what I found very inspiring about his comments were when they said, but is he suspect under the high ball? He said, well, if he is, we're going to find out on Saturday. And if he is, we're going to fix it.
Yeah.
He said, I know what he can
do. We tend to throw players away after single games or poor performance here.
Or we tend to want to put them in a World 15 after a 25-pointer against a Fijian side. So I think he's been very clear in his understanding. He's also been very honest with the players in terms of where their pecking order. And that was one of the big successes of 2007's World Cup campaign with Jake White. When they picked the squad, he sat them down and he said, you're 1, you're 2, and you're 3. If number 1 is suspended for a quarter-final or a semi-final, and number 2 is injured and number 3 plays and scores 25 points, and on that Monday, number 1 is fit, he plays the final. not number 3.
Yeah.
So he wasn't going to be swayed by a game when the other 2 couldn't be then. I think Rusty's taken that similar mentality. But it's also, you look at the South African thing, the obsession with the All Blacks, putting them on a pedestal. Give them their due. For 10 years, they've lost 12 tests in 112. It's unrivaled in international sport. But we would need to stop comparing every performance we have with, would we have beaten the All Blacks on Saturday?
No.
You know, if you look at that first 34 minutes against Australia, would the All Blacks have beaten the Springboks on, that day?
Yeah.
But you never hear that talk from the other side. So I reckon if we can build momentum in Mendoza, get to Australia, we are good enough to beat them there, be competitive at Wellington, come back, we always hammer Australia at home, and that it comes down to that final match, which it hasn't for a long time. A fired up Loftus crowd with belief here, and a very good set piece, and a good functional 9 and 10. We should be believing we should beat any team at home, given that. And we beat a bloody good England team. I don't care what anyone says, that's a good England side that came here, who've been together for nearly 3 years under Eddie Jones. 24-3 up in their opening game, 12-0 up in the second game, and they showed incredible ticker and just rugby brains to come back and win those games.
Yeah, no, you're right, Mark. I think in a lot of what you say, I'm not sure about the All Black losing to South Africa, but why don't we go down and watch the game? We should get a box and maybe invite some people that can predict scores right in the build-up.
Only those who understand your handicap.
Exactly. Anyway, Mark, thanks very much for coming in, and we'd like to meet with you again and chat about transformation. Which is a very hot topic, I think, now. And
something always close to my heart. So
yeah, no, I appreciate that. But thanks again, and hope you enjoyed the video, guys, and chat to you soon.